Good evening, everybody. This is Man Coverage and Safety in the Sports Writer crossover show with Knoxville Nate, Big Joe, and James Bonneville coming to you live on Thursday, September 7th, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Wow. We got some football to talk about, gentlemen.
Thank God.
Week 1 is upon us. It has come and gone, actually. And then we got week 1 of the NFL kicking off tonight, which we will touch a little bit on this evening. But we're going to dig in real hard to college football because we had, the reason that I love college football was what was on display on Saturday. I mean, 21-point underdogs were the Colorado Buffaloes. They went into Fort Worth playing the national championship game attendee in TCU. I say attendee because they didn't really show up. I mean, they were there, but they didn't really show up in that national championship game. They got their asses kicked by Georgia. But regardless, they were in the national championship game. They got their quarterback, who was actually supposed to be their starting quarterback, to be back in the fold this year. Now they lost, obviously, Kendre Miller. They lost the big-time receiver to the Chargers. But they've got still some pretty good pieces off of that national championship team. And they couldn't stop Colorado. 45-42. Prime said they were going to win. Said that nobody thought they were going to win. And they won. And I've got to say, I do point out when I'm wrong. I also really like to point out when I'm right. And if you recall 4 years ago now, I saw his son play high school football here in Knoxville, Tennessee, when the high school team that Dion was the offensive coordinator for and his son was the quarterback for came to town. And I was like, man, that kid looks like D1 talent. He looked like D1 talent on Saturday. James, I'll start with you. I know you didn't pick the Buffaloes because I don't think anyone did. We both thought they might have a good game. What did you think when you saw that they beat the TCU Horned Frogs?
Well, I mean, there were three things that really stood out to me. And you got to start with their offense. And specifically, Sean Lewis, their OC, who came over as from the head coach being at Kent State and runs that veer raid offense. I mean, it's a very high tempo, a lot of reps. The one thing I was really impressed with is how Shedeur Sanders really developed into his system and took what was given to him. When TCU was playing off, he was taking everything underneath. He was being very patient, which is weird for a team that scored 45 points, being patient, but he took what they gave him and they utilized what they had. But I mean, the guy who really started the show for me was Travis Hunter. I mean, if you had to start off the gates, I know a lot of people are going to bring up Jordan Travis. If there was a Heisman after week 1, it's Jordan Travis. I mean, just watch that out pattern where he is covering the corner before going into the end
Jordan
zone.
Travis or the kid
Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter.
Yeah,
Travis Hunter. He's playing corner on that one out pattern where he gets that pick. I mean, that is a NFL type of pick. I mean, I sat there watching that, and I'm like, that's a guy that's going to probably go in the top 5. And it's not like Chandler Morris is a bad quarterback. He's a damn good quarterback. And on any other corner in the country, he would have gotten the completion.
Yeah,
Hunter just jumped that route so well.
He did. And Joe, I want to get to you in 1 second. James, I got one more question for you. He played a ton of snaps. I mean, it was 110 degrees on the field.
Yeah.
He played over 100 snaps. Can he keep that up?
No. I mean, there's no way he can. I mean, it's honestly, if I was Prime, I would be thinking of that for his big games like SC, which, let's be honest, that game is going to be a freaking track meet.
Yeah.
I mean,
No.
if over under is anything under 100, I mean, be surprised. I mean,
Yeah.
it's going to be just a shootout. First one to 60 wins. We're going to be like Sam Bradford Big 12 rules in that game. So
Yeah.
I look at that, and I mean, Travis Hunter is just a man amongst boys.
Well, he was the number one player in the country coming out of high school, so
Yeah.
I'm not real shocked to see the talent that he
There,
possesses. But
that's the pick. That was the pick right there.
Yeah, it was kind of shocking to see him do this in game one. Joe, obviously we talked about Colorado a lot in the offseason. He came in, he told the players basically to get the hell out. That he didn't want those guys there to pack their bags because he was bringing in his own boys, and we all saw that interview. Prime, he was pretty blunt. The team went 1-11 last year, so it wasn't like they had a bunch of players, but he brings in 58 transfers and turns this roster over. Is this the new college football, Joe? I mean, what do you think about him flipping this roster so quickly and having instant success?
I'm pumping the brakes on a lot of it. I mean, I think it's great for Colorado. I mean, it's great for a program like that that's been down for so long to get a chance to believe in something. As you guys said, the offense looked phenomenal, and they made some plays on defense, but they still gave up 42 points to a team that lost a lot of players, from a team that surprised everybody a year ago. A big on-the-road victory. But we all know another thing, coming into the first game of a year, you don't really know what to look for. And now we've seen some warts on the Horned Frogs, and we've seen a lot of good things from Colorado. But let's face facts, too. Eventually, you have to be able to make the stops when you make the stops against good teams. And I don't think TCU's going to measure up to down the road the USCs and things like that. So I don't know. I really don't know what to see, but I know that Dion is a great promotions guy. I think he's proven that, when he first got into coaching, I kind of was like, huh? I was expecting him to be on TV doing this, doing that. For him to go into coaching was kind of a surprise for me, but he seems to be a football junkie, and he seems to be putting in the right players around him. I just don't want to go overboard like everybody else did the first week, anointing him and Colorado the new big thing. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens over the next. Let's see what happens against Nebraska. Let's see what happens down the road. But hey, so far so good. You can't put down a victory. A victory is a victory.
Yeah, no, it was, and James, I think maybe this was a little bit of Prime wanting to win this game really bad. Obviously, they had a lot of time to game plan, and let's be honest, TCU, they pulled off a lot of close games last year, a lot of games that they potentially could have lost and came down to the last play of the game, and so maybe this was a little bit of football payback where you can't win every single game. When it could go either way. What do you expect, I guess, from TCU the rest of the season? Do you think they can recover from this loss, or do you think this sends them going in the wrong direction?
Well, I mean, it's your definition of what's recovery. I mean, do I think this is
Are they a top 20? Are they a top 20 team in your mind the rest of the season?
They could be. I mean, I would like to see really, how they were. I mean, they're going to pound Nichols. I would look more at, because their schedule's really not that difficult until they go to Kansas State. I mean, they play all the right games on the road. I mean, they go at Houston. I mean, let's be honest, Dana Holgerson's obituary has been written while we speak. SMU, home against Virginia, at Iowa State, home against BYU. I mean, you have to go to, October 21st before they play at K-State. And I think K-State whips them because I don't think they're as good on the line of scrimmage. I really don't. I mean, do I think they've got a better depth at receiver? Yeah, absolutely. Do I think Chandler Morris is a good quarterback? 100%. But they lost a lot on both sides of the line of scrimmage.
Yeah,
Well,
they
how
certainly
good is
did.
Chandler Morris? How good is Chandler Morris? I mean, how
I
good
mean,
is he?
he's legit. He is very legit. I mean, this is not like some kid who just, he was very highly recruited coming out of high school. I mean, do I think he's got like an NFL arm where he's going to be bombing, doing those bombs? No, I think he's much like Max Duggan. I think Max Duggan just found a groove last year after Morris got hurt, came in and never came off the field. Kind of like the Wally Pipp scenario.
Yeah, well, I mean, he was supposed to be the starter last year,
Yeah, he
and
did.
and
Did,
then
and then
it
he got hurt.
just he went down, and then Max Dugan came in, and like you said, the rest is history. But he is a good player, so we'll see what happens from here with TCU. But I think, like I said, I think they got a little bit of their own medicine, and lost a game that they could have won. I mean, it came down to the last series, and it was kind of like who got the ball last. But a team that has experienced some difficulties in the past 3 games they have played is our boy Dabo down in Clemson, South Carolina. Dabo was rolling it for about 6 years here, fellas. He went to 4 of 5 college football playoffs. He won 2 titles. As me and James talked about, he was recruiting at an amazing clip.
Yeah.
This guy was getting it done, and all of a sudden they go down to South Carolina, get beat. They lose to Tennessee in the Orange Bowl. They lose to Duke at Duke, which was the first victory for a Duke team versus a ranked opponent since 1989 when they played Clemson. Steve Spurrier is their coach. So, it's not looking good right now. And Joe, I'll get to you first. We heard a lot of shit last year about it was DJU not getting the ball out, DJU not hitting his receivers in stride, not going through his reads. It was all the quarterback's fault. Well, DJU's gone, and we're going to talk about him in a second, but we got a different guy under center, and the offense looks very much the same as it did last year, lethargic, to put it lightly. What do you think's going on in Clemson in your mind? And around here, people are saying Tennessee is getting a lot of Clemson's recruits that they were getting, and other teams are getting their recruits. Do you think this is, a beginning of a downturn for the Tigers?
Downturn might be too strong because I do think Dabo is a good coach, and I think he'll figure it out to a point. I don't think he'll become, forgotten about, but it could be turned into the next Bob Stoops, where he's good enough to win his conference and nothing else. Sure. He's got to start getting those players back that he was able to get, those NFL, like you said, those NFL players. But it's harder to recruit these days. It's just getting harder and harder for these guys to stockpile the talent they used to stockpile. You don't want to say Duke's on their same level, so I think it's a blip on the scope. But he's got to self-correct this thing fast, and he's got to get some confidence in this. What's it, Klubnik, the young quarterback? You got to get some confidence going in this guy's, because the kid's a sophomore and he's probably reeling right now, and he's probably hearing about it because he's only 2 years removed from Trevor Lawrence, but Trevor Lawrence never had this, so he's going to get a lot of what's going on around campus. So, yeah, I don't think it's a total downturn, but he's got to self-correct and figure out where he's leaking it right now because, he's not supposed to lose that game.
No, he's definitely not. And I think 2 things, James. I want to get your thoughts. One, I think Duke is better than a lot of people gave them credit for. I think this coach at Duke is doing a tremendous job. I like their quarterback. To be honest, he's a winner. Duke dominated this game, in my opinion. I think the score, I don't think, was really indicative of how much Duke was dominating the play. So, A, I think Duke is better than we think. And B, I don't think Clemson is as talented as they've been in the past. There's no Trevor Lawrence. There's no Deshaun Watson. There's no T. Higgins on this team. Will Shipley is the only guy on offense that worries me at all and that I think demands game planning against. What do you think about all that? What are your feelings about A, Duke, and B, Clemson moving forward?
Well, there's one thing about Dabo's teams, I think some statistics that people don't know about, that this was bound to happen. One, in the 14 years Dabo has been in Clemson, South Carolina as their head coach, guess how many offensive linemen have been drafted in the draft? Not just the first round, in the draft. That'd
Not
be
many.
two total in 14 years. How do you have a team going to multiple national championship games and you only have 2 offensive linemen getting drafted? Second of all, you look at the slot position, the slot receiver position. Amari Rodgers, Hunter Renfrow, the Leggett kid. Go back. They've always had guys on the outside, but when they've really needed that 3rd and 7, 3rd and 10 of somebody laying down in the zone, they've always had that one guy. Who is that guy? They have not had him for the past 3 years. And now the defense is starting to get depleted. I mean, they don't have the ample number of great defensive linemen like they once did. I mean, there isn't Dexter Lawrence's and Cleveland Farrell's like hanging off the vine in Clemson like there once was. Heck, they had 2 great defensive linemen last year. Yeah. And in many cases, they disappeared.
You think about it, Brian Breezy, Miles Murphy. I mean, those 2 guys were NFL draft picks and guys that were, started since they were freshmen. Well, one reason they kept starting was there was nobody coming to push them and take their spots because they weren't bringing in those caliber of D linemen. And, I think, they're not getting the same types of guys they were. Yeah. I think, the uptick in some of these other teams that recruit the same areas as them is affecting them. And then also, the portal. Some guys have taken off. Yep. You can't be as deep in positions. I mean, Georgia, Ohio State, Bama, they're kind of continuing their depth. But some of these other teams that have been traditionally strong have had issues keeping their depth. I guess
I go back to it and look at it this way. Dabo's not an X's and O's guy. He's a recruiter. He's a CEO, which is becoming the new in-fad thing in college football. But you better have X's and O's guys. Now, during his heyday, there were a couple constants. You either had Chad Morris or Jeff Scott at OC. Both of them are gone. And Brent Venables is now in Norman.
Yeah, I think that defense looked different without Venables. Yeah. And, he's a guy that brought a lot of energy to that program. I think a lot of defensive players wanted to play for him. And I think him leaving, that was a guy, he was offered head coaching jobs time and time again, and he always turned them down. He said he wanted to stay where he was. He loved where he was at. And then all of a sudden now he's gone, and I think it's affecting them. Joe, first off, what do you think about Duke? Are you believing them as a top 20, 25 team?
Not yet. I mean, they have potential for it. I think they do. But it's 1 week. I'm always pumped the brakes on this. Let me see what goes on. Even what's going on in Notre Dame. I'm really interested in what's going to happen on Notre Dame this week, but we'll talk about that later. The thing I want to get back to what James was saying is, how can Dabo reload this coaching staff? Where is he going to get those guys again? If, like you say, he is a CEO, where is he going to get those guys? And if he is such a great recruiter, how he better start recruiting? I mean, if he's not getting the players. So, I mean, he's either got to overload on talent, or where is there any coaches out there, ex-head coaches wandering around that might be somebody he should maybe kick the tires on, a la what Saban does?
Well, I know he did bring in Garrett Riley from TCU, but I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. The offense looked exactly the same as last year's Clemson offense.
It did. I mean, it didn't look anything like TCU's offense last year. I'll tell you that much. And this is what happens to big time programs. Okay, look at Bama. Their coordinators get picked off every year, and they get head coaching jobs year after year after year after year. Georgia's coordinator's gone. Todd Monken's gone. He went to Baltimore. Dan Lanning's in Oregon. I mean, but these guys. Nick Saban and Kirby Smart, they keep it going. And I think maybe this is starting to catch up a little bit with Dabo, losing his coordinators time and time again. And finally, like I said, losing Venables, I think, was the big blow.
Yeah, so.
Well, here's a question for you guys. Could you guys name Clemson's defensive coordinator?
No.
Exactly. That's the problem. I mean, Wes, Goodwin. Wes Goodwin.
Yeah,
Guy
they
brought in
promoted
from the program.
from within, right? They promoted
Yeah.
him from within. I knew that I knew like who he was, but I could not remember his name because I kind of thought they should have gone out and get somebody. But he's real big on promoting from within,
Bingo.
and that doesn't always work. So we'll see. As Joe said, I'm waiting to see on all this crap. I mean, I'm not touting anybody as the national champion yet, like Notre Dame fans. I'm not, burying anybody after week one.
Beat Navy.
Yeah, no kidding. But, let's be honest, there is a lot of folks jumping on this FSU bandwagon. Now, it was a good game, man. Okay, the game plan was strong. I've always liked Mike Norvell. And did I know he was going to have success at Florida State? I wasn't 100% sure, but he certainly did a great job at Memphis. I thought after the first 2 years they might go ahead and get rid of him because they were turning over coaches at an alarming rate down in Tallahassee. But they stuck with him, and damn good thing that they did because he called a hell of a ball game the other night versus LSU. Joe, I'll ask you first. What do you is Florida State a team in your mind after watching them play last year and watching the first game of this year that can compete in the college football playoff with these other powers, with Georgia, with Bama, with Buckeyes? Do you think Florida State can play with those three teams?
I once they get there, I don't know. I don't think they're that good yet, but I think they can get into the mix. I think they're heading in the right direction. That was a big time win. I tell you, that was probably the most popular win of the weekend because if you didn't love Florida State, you hated Brian Kelly. So it was like everybody and his mother and father were like cheering on that win. So I mean, I think they're heading in the right direction. The thing about it's good for Florida State, and I have a bunch of friends that are Florida State fans, and you'd think that Bobby Bowden Jr. or Bobby Bowden 2 came along. This is going to be the next great Florida State Seminoles run because it's been a long time since they've won a game like that, and they were dominant. So, it's hard to say they can't compete, especially when you see what Clemson did. So you got to put them right up there with Clemson right now in the ACC. So,
yeah, no, and that's a great point because James, I want to get your feelings on this. Florida State's schedule is actually very, very favorable if you look at it. I don't see another team that can, if they play like they played the other night, I don't see another team that can knock them off until they go to Clemson, honestly. So their schedule is very favorable. And then this game, LSU is winning 17-14 at halftime. And so I ask you, A, do you think that they can run this schedule? And B, what the hell happened in the second half?
Well, okay, here's a couple things I noticed about it. I look at this LSU team. We talked about Clemson maybe seeing a downgrade. I think there's problems in Baton Rouge. I think there are very realistic problems. And I can't believe I'm saying this about Brian Kelly teams because Brian Kelly teams, there's always been a very static thing. They're going to be great on the line of scrimmage. But outside Jaden Daniels running the ball, I mean, their offensive line was not opening up anything. And they got Noah Cain as a running back. I mean, Noah Cain ran at Penn State when Penn State had no offensive line. How in the world is he not being able to do it here? And defensively, I mean, Mike Norvell's system was pretty, they finally got an offensive line where there is some depth to it, when's the last time you've seen that at Florida State? I mean, you've got to go back to, the mid-2000s.
Yeah.
Well, I take that back. The last national
Jimbo had a pretty good line when they won the title in 2014.
But after that, it's been completely a mess. But you watch it, you rewatch the game. Wherever Darian Chestnut was lining up, they were going in the opposite direction. So if he was lining up against Wilson, they were going to Coleman. If he was lining against Coleman, they were going to Wilson. They were constantly throwing away from him. And they lined up Harold Perkins in a shadow role to make sure Jordan Travis didn't run. So you've taken your best defensive player and made him guard one person. and it made him really have problems. I mean, Florida State, I mean, saying it was 45-24 makes it sound like it was somewhat close. This could have easily been in the 60s.
Well, and they scored a touchdown at the end that was meaningless. LSU was still trying to play, and Florida State had put their backups in, and there was a blown coverage, and so it that last touchdown was garbage. Stephanie's fired up. For her Knowles. Go, Steph. They played a great game, and I give a ton of credit, as I was talking about earlier, Mike Norvell halftime adjustments. It kind of seemed like to me that they went into halftime pretty much even, and they came out of halftime, and Brian Kelly was standing over there going, "Shit, what am I doing?" And Mike Norvell was like, "Do what I said, boys. We're going to make those changes. We're going to roll them," and they did. You know Brian Kelly very well, Joe. What did you think about his coaching performance the other night? And do you think he can have success down in Baton Rouge? Because that's kind of what we've been asking ourselves since he was hired there.
Brian Kelly, I've talked about this at length. I mean, I loved it when Notre Dame hired him, but I never saw him take Notre Dame to the next level. I don't think he's really good at handling quarterbacks. His teams, they win 9-10 games. He's a good coach. I don't think he's one of the greatest coaches of all time. And right now, where he's got to be at LSU, you're going up against Alabama. You're in the best conference in the nation, probably, that or the Big Ten, and you can't get away with this. You're not going to be able to you're not going to have Navy on your schedule. You're not going to have Temple on your schedule. You're not be able to. I mean,
hell, he beat Bama last year, though.
Yeah, but still, that's a one-off to me. I'm not a Brian Kelly believer.
The only thing that bothers me about him is he goes in SEC Media Day. He tells everybody, "Hey, we're still a year away. We've got to get a couple of things cleaned up. We got to bring in some recruits in this area, this area, this area." And then the night before the game, or the 2 days before the game, he tells everybody they're going to kick the crap out of the Knowles. And it's like, well, which is it? Are you a year away, or are you going to beat everybody? And then he backtracked from that statement. So he's kind of a jackass, honestly. But he is a good football coach. He does win games, and I'm not ready to give up on LSU yet. Even though I don't love, as James mentioned, I don't love their offensive personnel. Their running backs don't really scare me. They do not have a Jamar Chase or a Justin Jefferson or anything close to that on the outside.
Malik Neighbors is pretty solid. But yeah, would I compare him to JJ or Chase? No, not even close.
No.
I mean, honestly, remember the UCLA when LSU went to UCLA a couple years back, and UCLA put their will on them?
Yeah.
That second half was the same thing. I mean, some of those running plays, they were trucking guys.
Yeah, they were losing the line of scrimmage. And if you go back and look, LSU has lost 4 openers in a row. 4. And that blows my mind considering how good of a program they are. But talking about good programs, the Buckeyes played on Saturday. I don't know if you know, but the Buckeyes did play. They traveled to the Hoosier Dome in the Assembly Hall, or no, that's not right. Memorial Stadium. And I thought we were playing basketball here. No, because that's all Indiana really
Next thing you're telling me, Bobby Knight came on the floor and threw on the field and threw a chair too as well.
Hey, I'll tell you this: Tom Allen had a hell of a game plan, and I know people make fun of Indiana football, and you know what? Hell, you should. But they came out ready to play. He had that defense fired up. Their offensive game plan was to slow the game down as much as possible and basically keep the Ohio State offense off the field. And they did that. McCord was a little shaky. He looked a little nervous, which rightfully so. And, we lost. Paris Johnson Jr. was the 6th pick in the draft, the left tackle who went to the Arizona Cardinals. DeJuan Jones, how he lasted as long as he did in the draft, I'll never know. But he got drafted, and he's going to be starting or playing for the Browns. And then Weipler, the center, got drafted or got signed as an undrafted free agent. So there's our 3 starters gone off the offensive line. I know, James, you didn't like the offensive line. but I think this rush to judgment and calling the offense sluggish and the Buckeye fans calling for McCord to be benched and all this crap is ridiculous. It looked like game one to me. And if you take away the play where McCord ran the wrong way, running in the goal line, and then the play where Marvin Harrison stepped out of bounds, there's 14 more points. But I'm a Buckeye fan, so I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Joe, you go first. Tell me what do you think about week one with the Buckeyes, and what are your thoughts about the game versus Indiana?
It's a Michigan hangover. I think that's why the fans are crazy. It's still licking their wounds from Michigan. I think did they play a good game? No. But you know what's the whole thing? The difference between them and Clemson? They didn't play a good game, but they still won. And they still won by a lot. So, I mean, you're going to have bad games. That's the mark of a good program is when you play your crap, you still win. And they won by a lot. It's not like they didn't win. What, they win by 20 points?
23-3. 23-3.
If that's my worst game of the year, if that's my bad game, I'll take that.
On the road in conference?
Yeah, I'll take that. Let's not overreact. I mean, if we pump the brakes on success, let's pump the brakes on putting people down too. I mean, it's kind of crazy. They're 1-0 in the conference. That's what you wanted to be after the first week. Now, if this is in 4 weeks, they're still playing like this, you may throw up a red flag and start taking a look at them.
Yeah, James, what did you think?
Well, I mean, we already know about my thoughts about the offensive line, how they underperformed, and I think that's something to look at. But the one thing people should be, I think people in Columbus should be a little happier about is the other side of the ball. And Jim Knowles' defense showed out. I mean,
150 yards total given up, 3 points.
When's the last time you saw that out of Ohio State defense? When?
The last time they gave up 3 points or less was 2019.
Yeah.
And honestly, they didn't look that good in that game. Which was 4.5 years ago. So no, James, I'm so glad you brought that up because I'm a Buckeye crazy. And after the game, I just kept thinking about how great that defense looked. I mean, there wasn't the greatest offensive team we were playing, but they were running the option. They were doing things that we really didn't expect them to do. They ran 2 different quarterbacks out. They had that one kid, number 12. I can't remember his name, but he is a quick son of a gun who was the Big Ten's leading returner on special teams last year and is a very, very shifty in space. And they kept getting him the ball, and we kept figuring out ways to stop him. I was very impressed with Denzel Burke. I was very impressed with the secondary. The linebackers, Tommy Eichenberg is one of the best linebackers in the country. And I thought that the defensive line played solid. It was good to see Michael Hall Jr. back in. I think Jim Knowles has this defense going in the right direction. Am I wrong on that?
I would agree with you 100%. I mean, that has been Ohio. I mean, heck, you look at over the past 4 years, Ohio State's biggest problem was some part of their defense. It was either their linebackers, their D-backs, sometimes lack of depth at defensive line. It harmed them from winning the national championship. I mean, heck, if their D-backs played like this last year against Georgia, I mean, that game's a spanking in Atlanta. Yeah. And then we're talking TCU, Ohio State for the Natty. You won 23-3, fans. I mean, you can't expect Ohio State to throw up 40 every game. You just can't.
No, and Joe, I want to go to a comment that was made by Kirk Herbstreit yesterday, where he, I don't agree with Herbie all the time, and Herbie is Herbie, but he made a very good point. There's about 10 to 15% of the Ohio State fans that do nothing but harm the program with their BS. Post on social media calling for Ryan Day to be fired, calling for the quarterback to be pulled. Do these fans, can they make that much of a difference? I mean, there's recruits see this, the players see this. What the hell's wrong with these people, I guess, is my question.
I don't think the fans can sway recruits really unless they're, in Ohio State or they're Ohio State guys. But I mean, I think it comes with the territory of success, especially in college football. Notre Dame was always like that. I mean, USC has always been like that. I mean, you live and die with your success. Unfortunately for Ohio State, it's been a few years since they've won a national championship, so they're getting antsy. And it's tough. The whole thing is they got to put the blinders on. They got to put their earplugs in and stop worrying about it. Yeah, Herb Street. I mean, he's an Ohio State guy, so he's got his finger on the pulse of it. But if it's 15%, don't worry about it because 85% is still behind you. I mean, but 15%. This is the part. This is what we live in now. We're part of it right now. Everybody can put themselves up on YouTube or whatever and give their opinions. And for the worst case scenario, a lot of people don't try and do any kind of homework before they do it, and they react fast. But I said, like I said in the beginning of this part of the segment with it, 23-3, that's a win. That's a good win.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, they came to play. Tom Allen's a better coach than people give him credit for. Yeah. As I mentioned, he had a good game plan. The Buckeyes, they missed some plays, but you take those two plays, and turn them in the other direction. There's 14 more points. Then it's 37-3, and then no one's even talking. But this is the Buckeye bias, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a Buckeye fan. I'm saying this because it's true. Michigan plays East Carolina at home, wins 30-7, and everybody talks about how great they are. The Buckeyes go on the road and play a Big Ten team in Indiana and beat them 23-3, and they're sluggish.
Yeah,
the bias is real, boys.
Well, yeah. It's they're weighed down by their own success in a lot of ways. But like I said, let's see in 3 or 4 weeks if they don't correct whatever was missing and they're not doing that 37-3 game.
Yeah, no, I think they've got a couple weeks to get warmed up. James, they play Youngstown State Saturday. They play. They've got one more kind of warm up game after that. And, and then they play Notre Dame. So I think they've got 2 more weeks to get the offense ironed out. And the history tells us that Ryan Day will figure out a way to score points. So I'm not real worried about that. My thing is the defense looks good. That's what we needed to see is improvement on that side of the ball. Real quickly, Oklahoma, Oregon each of those teams put up 75 or more points. Oklahoma beating up old Butch Jones. I guess I'll get both your guys' takes on what are you thinking about these two teams. James, I'll ask you first. Oklahoma, Oregon looked good week 1. What do you expect about these two teams this year? These are two teams that in the past have competed, gone pretty deep in college football. Can these teams be there at the end in 2023 is my question to you.
Oregon, I go back and say both these are just throwaway games. Of the two teams I'm a little more excited about, and I'm not saying exceedingly excited about because we all know that they're passing the hat in Jonesboro, Arkansas to do the buyout for Butch Jones as quickly as humanly possible. But Jackson Arnold, the backup quarterback at Oklahoma, I will venture a guess that he will be the starter before the end of the year. I mean, that kid's got real skills. And, I mean, if it wasn't for Arch Manning being talked about like the second coming of Christ, Jackson Arnold was probably one of the better quarterbacks in the country coming out of college. Coming out of high school last year. I mean, you look at him and Dante Moore at UCLA. I mean, very high profile. And this kid's got a legit arm from the state of Texas. And I could easily see this kid starting sometime very soon in Norman.
You think he's going to unseat Dylan Gabriel?
I do. I really do. I think the second that Oklahoma runs into some kind of problem, and probably let's call it Red River rivalry, and they're going to do a switch out and Jackson Arnold comes in. And that kid's legit. That kid's got a real arm. Yeah. I'm talking like Sam Bradford-esque.
Yeah. Well, Joe, we've seen your boy from your boy Nix there from Auburn. We saw him have a really damn good season last year. Dan Lanning was year 2 up in Oregon. They dropped to 80-something points this week. The last year of the Pac-2. What are you thinking about Oregon's chances? Can they win?
Tupac, right?
Yeah, Tupac.
Like
Tupac.
Tupac. Yeah,
I like that.
I like that a lot. Can the Ducks win Tupac Shakur or conference or not?
Oh, sure they can. Sure they can up there. I mean, why not? I mean, they always give the talent up there. Nick's has been around for, I think, what was it? Who was it? George Bush was in the White House when he first started his college career. I mean,
he started that game against Oregon in his freshman year. That was like 6 years ago. So
I mean, he's become the Colt McCoy of college football now. I mean, he seems to have been there forever. Yeah, they can win that. I mean, that conference. The worst thing about that conference is like, who's going to really take it seriously? That's why they're lucky to have like Dion there. I mean, because no one's going to be really watching it because everybody's leaving the conference going cross country. They're packing up the Winnebagos and leaving.
It's kind of sad, honestly.
It is sad
that this conference is folding. I've always, me, I'm a football junkie. So at 1 a.m, I'm always up watching Pac-12 football, and it's going to be no more. So I'm kind of sad about that.
You're not looking forward to that great Oregon-Purdue game next year? I mean, I know I am.
Oh, God.
Washington at Maryland?
Not if California's playing Wake Forest.
Yeah, that's
must-see TV.
Yeah, the ACC just got worse. I mean, the whole point of expanding is to bring in good teams to improve your conference, not to go get the leftover crap from Tupac and bring it into your already shitty conference. I don't understand that. But as far as the ACC goes, I will give them a little bit of credit. UNC.
I wanted to hit that.
Yeah, UNC looked pretty good. Joe, give me your thoughts on UNC taking down South Carolina pretty handily.
Yeah, and I mean, they're going up against Spencer Rattler. I mean, they were in control the whole game, and I mean, Drake May he was getting kind of roasted by what I saw. Everybody was expecting. I mean, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, but I mean, they were ahead the whole game. I mean, he's a sophomore. Maybe not the greatest game, but they won it handily, like you said, comfortably. I guess these Heisman Trophy voters are out early trying to take this down. But, I mean, I thought it was a good victory. I thought the ACC overall, outside of the Clemson loss, I mean, but the rise of Duke, UNC, and the story about Florida State was a good weekend for ACC to get people paying attention to the ACC. You got 3 good storylines, plus the watch on Clemson. Can they turn it around? So you got 4 good reasons to watch ACC football after the first week.
I got to second that notion too as well, because there was a story on ESPN about the downfall of the ACC. And I was just kind of like, are you kidding me? Like, they're like bringing up stuff like Georgia Tech losing a conference game to Louisville. Virginia, who's expected to finish last, if not dead last, in the AC, getting beat by Tennessee. That's pretty expected.
Yeah.
Boston College, not on top of the hill. I mean, the teams that are on the bottom are on the bottom. But I mean, overall, I mean, you look at Florida State. I mean, I look at the schedule right now, and as long as they stay healthy, they're going to the playoff. And Pitt, I mean, people are underestimating Pitt. I could see Pitt being a 9-3 team and doing some damage.
Yeah, no, that's true. Florida State has got, as I mentioned earlier, a very, very favorable schedule. The only game that looks like they might even, have some sort of difficulty is the game they play at Clemson. But, based on what we saw with Clemson, that doesn't really scare me. Now, Florida State's been up here before where we've said, oh, they're back. They're going to roll people. They're going to be so good. In fact, last year was one of them. And then they ended up dropping games they shouldn't. That's the thing is, are they going to drop games they shouldn't? That's what is really concerning to me is, can they win the games they're supposed to win? That is the biggest question I have for the Noles. Can they, obviously they played good in a big game They were fired up. They had, the opener, everything going on. They've got a veteran quarterback, but I tell you, James, I saw a couple of plays where Jordan Travis won the interception where he threw across his body into traffic and got picked off. And then later I was like, well, he won't do that again. And later on in the game, he did the same damn thing. The LSU player just dropped it. So, I'm not sure if that guy is a national championship winning quarterback. In my opinion, he's good, but I just don't know how good.
Honestly, the one person that nobody's really talking about is when they got Keon Coleman from Michigan State.
Yeah.
I mean, that kid's a difference maker. I was shocked when Mel Tucker got him to begin with.
Yeah.
And to come to find out, he didn't want to go to Florida State because they thought the program was in disarray. And now that the program's in more stable space, he comes back to Tallahassee, and look at him now. Tag team with Wilson. They run that two-back running back set where, they were picking up yards like it was going out of freaking style in the second half. It was crazy watching it. If they can keep that momentum going, I could see him in the Final Four.
Yeah, the schedule looks good. That's for sure. They've got a very, very favorable schedule. The problem is, Georgia. I don't know,
Yeah.
Joe, if you've taken a look at Georgia's schedule.
No, I haven't really looked up.
Well, we're going to talk about it here just for a second.
Go ahead.
Because this is, in the NFL, when you win your division, the division winners or teams that make the playoffs, they have a
weighted
first place schedule the next year. Well, this team's won 2 straight national championships, and let's talk about their schedule for a second. They opened up last week against UT Martin. Well, they didn't have trouble there. They welcome in Ball State to Sanford Stadium this week. Then they go and welcome in, I don't know how they got 3 or 4 straight home games to start the year, but they do. They have 4 straight home games. UT Martin, Ball State, South Carolina, the Whopper of UAB, and then they go to Auburn for their first away game, which has a first-year head coach. They then welcome back Kentucky. They go to Vandy, to Florida, who sucks, and then they welcome in Missouri and Ole Miss, and then they've got Tennessee and followed up with Georgia Tech. Who the hell on that schedule is going to beat them besides maybe Tennessee?
That's exact. Ole Miss at 20 is such a reach. Their passing game had severe problems last year, and everybody and their dog is going to be freaking focused in on Quinshawn Junkins, and their defense was schizophrenic. First half of the year looked good. Second half, they looked like they were playing the Helen Keller defense. I look at that schedule, and you might as well mark them down. They're going to be playing in the Final Four.
Yeah, don't you see? Do you see them losing a game with that schedule, Joe?
No, not at all. They shouldn't.
No.
It depends on their new quarterback not doing the job. But other than that, no, they should race right through it. The other team I want to bring up before we get off this, though, is, look, as a Notre Dame guy, I'm cautious. They won their first 2 games against nobodies, but they won by what they were supposed to win by. Will Sam Hartman have the effect they need to get them into the mix?
Yeah, I don't know. This guy, he looks good against teams like this. Okay, I've watched this guy for years at Wake Forest, and he puts up big numbers, and he puts up huge numbers against crap teams. But I've seen where he starts to play, the competition gets tougher, and his game kind of goes the other direction. I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback, but I'm not necessarily. I'm taking your approach here, Joe. I'm not necessarily buying this just yet. Navy is not good. They shouldn't have fired their coach in the locker room after the Army-Navy game last year. That was a mistake. So I'm not real impressed with that win. And they looked good again last week. But we're going to find out how good Notre Dame is when they play Ohio State in week 4.
I think this week too.
This week, NC State's offense and defensive line are legit. And I go back to, and I don't care if you've got to go back to maybe like Lou Holtz, where this wasn't a problem. Ohio State, Notre Dame has had a problem at D-back, at corner especially, and their receiving core. there's been, I mean, this receiving core especially, I mean, is paper thin. And I mean, now you're going up against real defenses. This is a real test for Notre Dame to see, are they real, or is this just crap? We don't know.
And the other thing about it, this game, I agree with you. It's going to be a big test for them. And you would think because he comes from the ACC, that Sam Hartman would have a little bit of a glimpse into what NC State's going to try and do to him, and understand what they're going to try and do. So that if they lose with that going for them, it really takes the Sam Hartman effect down for me.
Well, NC State is a very tough place to play. Okay, Clemson's found that out the last few years, and a number of teams have. When their quarterback is healthy and they're at home, they're a difficult team to beat. They've got Brennan Armstrong, the kid from Virginia last year, who is a pretty solid quarterback in my mind. So I think that's a really good game to watch coming up this weekend is Notre Dame at NC State. But let's talk about some of the other games that we're previewing for week 2. Obviously, Notre Dame, NC State, we already talked about it. The other one that really sticks out to me is Ole Miss and Tulane.
Yes.
We saw Tulane in the bowl game last year take out USC. They won their opener. I love the coach down there in Tulane. Let me get a little bit of prediction from each of you guys. Who do you think wins this game and why? Joe, who do you like? Do you like Ole Miss? Do you like Tulane? What are you looking at?
Oh, man, I'm going to go with Ole Miss. I like Tulane, but I just have this feeling about Ole Miss. I don't know. There's no specific thing I could put on it. But Ole Miss usually gets off to a pretty good gate. I'm going to go with Ole Miss on this. What do you think, James?
I'm the same way, and the reason why I say that is, Tajay Spears is gone at running back, and people forget how big an influence he was on that on their offense last year. I mean, he was a very underrated running back. We talked about him extensively in the second half of the season, but heck, we didn't even know about him. I mean, he just came out of nowhere, and look where he went in the draft. I mean, this is a kid that really took that next step, but I mean, without him, I could see Quinshon Judkins really going off, and Jackson Dart had a really nice weekend last weekend with over 330 yards. I mean, granted, they're playing Sister Mary's of the Poor, but I mean, their offensive passing game last year was not good, which is weird for a Lane Kiffin offense.
Well, no, and I want to talk about that for just a second. We dug in deep of these quarterback battles.
Yeah.
Were you surprised that they went with Jackson Dart? I mean, Spencer Sanders also, I believe, got to play and played pretty well. Do you think they stick with if they stick with Jackson Dart? And what are your thoughts about him running this offense?
I was a little surprised by last year, especially the way they looked in the second half of the year. I mean, you don't bring in, Walker Howard or Spencer Sanders if you are completely confident in Jackson Dart. But
18 of 23, 334 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now, they were playing Mercer. So, I could have thrown 3.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think this is going to be – you're playing in Tulane, and that is a really small – let's be honest. In many cases, it's a big high school football stadium. It's not that big of a place to play. They're not playing in the Superdome anymore. They're playing on campus in this little stadium. And is Ole Miss going to be up for that? I mean, granted, I think their fan base is going to probably show up too as well, but – I got to say, I'm picking Ole Miss. I think Judkins runs wild.
All right. Well, I'm taking Tulane since you guys are both, living together with Ole Miss. I'll take Tulane at home and the points because my guess is Ole Miss is favored. Another game that sticks out to me big in week 2 is, and I don't know why this game sticks out to me and why it matters to me, but for some reason, Texas A&M versus Miami. We all watched the game last year. We watched Texas A&M just look god-awful all year long with all that talent. They brought in Bobby Motorcycle Wreck Petrino in the offseason. Everybody's waiting for him and Jimbo to punch each other on the sidelines. What do you think about this game between Texas A&M and Miami, Joe? Who do you think is going to win, and what do you think about each one of these teams?
Well, like you said about Texas A&M, they're the king of the underachievers. But Miami is another team that's been in disarray for a long period of time. I'm gonna go with A&M on this side of the gate. See what they got. They got too much talent where they can't. They got to have something. They got to win one of these games, don't they? Isn't there a rule?
Well, they got a good. I mean, they have a young quarterback who's looked pretty strong so far. At least in week one, he looked pretty good. James, what do you think about Texas A&M going into this game, and do you think Texas A&M is going to beat Miami this Saturday?
Honestly, I'm going to go with Miami on this one, but I think we should talk about the losers more than the winners. I think the losers are anybody who has to actually watch this game and ABC, because, I mean, this is the only drama that could come from this that I would love to see. It would be must-see TV.
Right.
Is if it's tied at halftime, does Jimbo try to take over play calling from Bobby Petrino, and do they fight on the sidelines?
That's what I want to see. I want to see a fight between Jimbo and Bobby. And I want Bobby to be in a neck brace with turf, like a turf burn, like he had when he got thrown off the motorcycle with his girlfriend.
The volleyball player. Yes, absolutely.
I want turf burn on his face. I want a neck brace, and I want Jimbo on top of him, just going like this.
100%. I'm all in.
Bobby Petrino blew it so hard. His first time around at Louisville, he was like the hottest thing in football. And then he goes to Atlanta, and he just keeps going downhill since then. I mean, that guy can't help himself.
Yeah, Arkansas was not a good stop for Bobby with all that went down there. But, obviously after what happened last week, that has knocked up this week's game several pegs. And obviously I'm talking about Colorado versus Nebraska. Folsom Field, which we're residing in right here on the screen, has become a, hard ticket to get. They're talking about $400 to get into this game. The cheapest ticket is $400. And hell, last year they couldn't pay people to get in this stadium. Dion certainly is brought attention back to the Buffaloes. You got probably the most overpaid coach of all time in Matt Rule. He's never won anything in his coaching career, yet he has gotten paid a butt ton of money. James, what do you think about? You saw Nebraska last week playing against your Gophers. What did you think about Nebraska? Do you think they can hang with Colorado on Saturday?
I mean, personally, I like Nebraska's defense. I thought they looked pretty impressive, to tell you the truth, especially their defensive backs. Now, if Shedeur Sanders plays like he did last week and is patient and takes what he's given, I'm taking Colorado. I mean, quite frankly, I look at the numbers on this, and I'm kind of shocked that Colorado's only picked to win by 4. But more importantly, from a betting standpoint, how in the world is this game only over under a 59? I mean, I take that back. The line moved. It's 3 points now to Colorado, and 59 over under. I just I'm shocked by that, especially after, Colorado's defense isn't exactly good.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff Sims is a guy that we saw at Georgia Tech. People were kind of shocked that he went to Georgia Tech, honestly, and now he's in Nebraska, and Matt Rule is there coaching. It's the Cornhusker curse. Can it ever be lifted? We've seen a lot of guys go in there and try and resurrect, the program after Tom Osborne and Frank Solich, departed. Nobody's been able to do it. Can Matt Rule do it? I don't know. He won at Temple. He won at Baylor. Now, as we mentioned, he didn't really win anything. He won games. So I think he can win games, but this is going to be, I think, the most interesting game of the weekend, simply because I want to see, which team really comes out looking good.
Yeah, agreed.
Looks like they could do something the rest of the year, because as Joe mentioned, he's not sold on Colorado yet, which, I think a lot of people feel that way. It's 1 week. 1 week does not, win you a season. So, we'll see who can, who can get this done. Joe, who you got, Colorado or Nebraska?
I'm gonna be the anti. I'm gonna go with Matt Rule. I think Matt Rule's good to average college football coach. He specializes in going to problem places and at least making them competitive. And I think he's gone to
the right. He's gone to the right spot then.
Yeah, and I think he has a chance to. Maybe he'll go to Chuba Purdy, his third string quarterback, and get a little Purdy magic going. Who knows? But I mean, I think that he can. I think wherever he's gone in college, he's made a positive effect. I don't know. I hate to say the word positive because he might be a jackass for all I know, and he turned out to be a jackass in the pros. But the fact matters, I think he's going to get some wins, and I think this might be one of them. I think because Deion, I think one thing about Deion is going to be Colorado. How is this team going to accept the attention they're getting right away?
Deion doesn't mind attention,
but does his players? Does his players?
His son don't seem to mind it either. James, who you got? Colorado or Nebraska?
I'm going to go Joe on this one. I'm going to take Nebraska. I think you're going to see a letdown from Colorado.
All right, Joe, I'm writing this down. Joe and James got Nebraska. I'm taking Colorado since you guys aren't. Kind of like I'm taking Tulane since you guys are taking Ole Miss. You guys are J&J over there, the J&J brothers.
He got A&M, I got Miami though. So
okay.
Separated there.
And then he also took Notre Dame. I took NC State. So
okay, good. I'm glad you're remembering this. So let's talk about the other big time game coming up this weekend. That's obviously the rematch from last year. Quinn Ewers, the douchebag, got hurt, left the game, and then after that, Alabama kind of started to play a little bit better. I don't know. Every year I hear how this is the year for Texas and they're going to be back and this is the time. And I don't know. I'm not going to believe it until I see it. What do you think about this weekend, Joe? You watched the game last year.
Yep.
Obviously Bryce Young is gone. Milroe is now the quarterback. He looked pretty damn good in week one against, MTSU is not a bad program and they thumped them. So I feel pretty good about Bama. Joe, what do you think about this game?
I think it's going to be Bama. I don't think is Quinn Ewers had his opportunity last year before he got injured to show something, and it was kind of like his little bighorn, whatever you want to call it, whatever analogy you want to use. And I think Quinn Ewers is one of those journeyman quarterbacks. And I'm not a Sarkisian believer. I think pretty good offensive coordinator. Head man, I don't think so. I really think Arch Manning made a mistake going there. I'll say it right now. I think he could have gone to a lot of better places, and I don't understand why he went there at all. A lot more proven track record, quarterback friendly coaches. I mean, where would he be right now if he'd gone to Georgia?
Well, he might be starting.
Right.
Is the one thing.
Yeah.
He might be starting. And, hell, if he'd have gone to Bama, he might be starting.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he's not better than Milroe. And, now he's going to be sitting there possibly watching Texas lose. James, who you got? Texas, Bama. And why?
Until you prove me wrong, Bama. You're playing in Bama. I mean, I don't want the points. I don't need the points, but I'll take the points. But, betting against Nick Saban in Bryant-Denny is just begging for problems.
Yeah, I agree. I'm all on the Bama bandwagon. I feel like everybody. I kept hearing I was fighting with people online, which I do sometimes, and then I'm like, after I get done, I'm like, why? What am I doing? I'm like, why am I fighting with these morons who know nothing about anything? And I'm making myself look stupid fighting with them. But I was fighting with this guy, and he tells me, the Buckeyes are going to fall down to Bama's level, how they've jumped down to mediocrity. And I'm like, mediocrity? Yes. And I'm like, mediocrity? I was like, did you watch Bama play last year? I said, they lost 2 games, won by 1 point in double overtime against LSU, and then they lost on a last-second field goal to Tennessee. Other than that, they destroyed everybody they played except for Texas. So how is that mediocre?
if that's mediocrity, I think the bar is a little high in that guy's world. I mean, 11-2 is. I mean, when this kid comes home and gets one wrong on a piece of on a test, does he like shame him to death that he's mediocre now? I mean, the kid still got an A, but I guess when losing 2 games, now you're mediocre. It's either national championship or bust, I guess.
Yeah.
Were you talking to Ricky Bobby?
I don't know what the guy's name was.
Because, I mean, either first or your last. I mean,
I'm going to pull up his Twitter handle and share it with the world, though, so we can all find this guy and talk to him. It's a pretty good slate of games here. I definitely am most interested probably to see Colorado, Nebraska, and then also, that Texas Alabama game. Those are probably the two that are going to catch my eye the most. But
hey, can I talk about 3 more games?
Yeah,
tell me.
Now you're going to laugh at me on the first one. Oregon and Texas Tech.
You mean Texas Tech, who just lost to Wyoming? That team?
I'm not going to lie. Playing in Laramie is not exactly easy. I mean, that's a very you're 7,200 feet above sea level. Plus, it's always windy there, and I'm not going to lie.
So you're making excuses for losing to Wyoming?
Wyoming's not bad. They're not awful. But I'm like, now, I keep looking at this game, and I'm like, are we going to see a letdown from Oregon? They're going into Lubbock, which Lubbock is not an easy place to play at. And, I mean, let's be honest. We've talked about Joey McGuire and Zach Kitely a lot on our show. I mean, the coaching staff's real.
Yeah, that's true. What other games you got?
Illinois and Kansas. I mean, 2 programs you got, up and coming. I mean, what is Illinois going to look like after? I mean, granted, they played like crap last week against Toledo, but they still bring back quite a bit. And we saw what Kansas did last year. And then last but not least, the game that people are probably laughing at, but really I want to see is Auburn and Cal at Cal. I mean, Cal put up over 50 points last week. I mean, the last time that happened, what Javid Best was running back? I mean, their offense has been a train wreck, and they put up 50 points on a team?
It's been probably since Nate Longshore was behind center. I'm interested in that one. But, we also have a game going on tonight, and that's in the NFL. We got the Chiefs and the Lions kicking it off here in about 53 minutes. So I'm excited to get the NFL season going. We're not going to talk a ton about the NFL today, but I do just real quick want to get in. Everybody's picking certain teams. Everybody's on the Jets. Everybody's on the Chiefs like they always are. I want to get each of you, which team do you think is going to overperform? Maybe they're kind of a sleeper team that, maybe isn't getting talked about as much as they should be. Who's the team that you think people are sleeping on and that you maybe personally are high on? Joe, tell me your team first.
I would say, but the worst thing is they've been getting a lot of talk the last week. I was very high on the Steelers. I think the Steelers are going to be. I think that the Bengals and the Ravens better pay attention to the rearview mirror. The Steelers improved dramatically in their offseason. You told me Kenny Pickett was going to be better than expected, and he was. Yep. His stats may not look it, but if you watched him play the way he improved over the year, I think they found the real thing. I think Najee Harris is going to be back to his old self. So I'd say the Steelers. And another game I really want to watch is the Bears opening game against Green Bay.
Yeah. I'm interested to see Justin Fields, and I'm interested to see your boy Jordan Love up in Green Bay. So that's a really good game to watch week 1. And I love the Steelers pick. Not only do I like Kenny Pickett, and did I say that I thought he would be a good pick? I thought they got him as a steal, sitting right where they were, waiting for him to just fall in their laps. He's a Pittsburgh guy. He goes, he was in the locker room already. So he just had to move his stuff down the hallway, and it was a really good fit for them. But really what I see is their offensive line for the first time in about 8 years is back to what the Steelers offensive line used to be. So I think that's a good pick, Joe. James, who do you got in the NFL team that you feel maybe people are sleeping on a little bit that you like?
Honestly, there's a couple teams. They're both in the NFC. Seattle. I mean, even though you got Geno Smith at quarterback, man, Pete Carroll has done a phenomenal job in drafting there the last few years.
Yes,
I
he
mean,
has.
holy crap. I mean, now you bring in JSN at receiver, and you bring Zach Charbonnet to tag team with Kenneth Walker III. I mean, that's just I'm so impressed of how the roster construction of what Pete Carroll's built there without a quarterback, and everybody leans on quarterback first, then everybody else. He went the other direction.
Yeah.
And the other team is Detroit. I mean, Detroit looks so much better the second half of the year, and I thought they had a phenomenal draft. I mean, Jack Campbell, the pterodactyl out of Iowa City, is going to be great in that system. I mean, I don't think you're going to have a linebacker that good since Chris Spielman in the Motor City.
No, I like the Jahmyr Gibbs pick too. I think he's a tremendous upgrade over DeAndre Swift. A guy that can catch the ball better than him. He can run it better than him. I think he was a really, really good pickup for the Lions. And to your Seattle, no, it's not just Pete Carroll. It's John Schneider. I think he's the best general manager in all of the NFL. I really do. And I don't know why more people don't think that. I guess they just don't know shit. But if you look at the draft picks, they had 6 guys that they drafted that were starting for their team last year, including a 7th rounder who was probably the best corner that came out in the draft. If you look at the season that he put together. So, I think that those are 2 good teams too. And I guess before we get out of here, who wins tonight? Chiefs or the Lions? Joe, who you got?
Oh man, I'm rooting for the Lions because we've talked at length. Jared Goff, I'd like to see him show the Rams weren't wrong, but I'd like to get him to get some kind of a year for being the class act he was when he took that trade and didn't say crap. But how do you go against Mahomes? I mean, even with Kelsey banged up, Mahomes. I've tried to come up with reasons that why he's not going to win, and every time I do, he comes up with another reason why he does. So I'm going to go Kansas City.
All right. Who you got, James?
I want to go Detroit in the worst way, but even though Travis Kelce's hurt, I'm going with the Chefs. I think, Kadarius Toney, yeah, he had problems in East Rutherford with the New Jersey Giants, but the guy's a real talent, and you put him in that offense.
Yeah,
when they made that trade, it was huge.
Name me a wide receiver or tight end who wouldn't want to play in the Andy Reid offense.
Yeah, exactly.
He never got on the field in New York. He was just always hurt, or he was out partying, or whatever he was doing. He wasn't ever really there. And once he went to Kansas City, they were like, listen, we traded for you. This is your last shot. Do you want to win some championships and play with Pat Mahomes, or you want to pack it in? And obviously, he took the further. So, it'll be interesting to see. I'm going to go ahead and take the Lions just because you're both taking the Chefs. I'm taking the Lions. I do think this team finished strong. I think, the Chiefs started a little bit slow last year. And, I'm hoping that the Lions come out strong to start the season. And I feel like they definitely improved their team. So I'm taking the Lions tonight. And I hope they beat the crap out of it because I'm really getting sick of hearing about how great Patrick Mahomes is. I know he's good, but it makes me nauseous every time someone tells me how good he is.
Hey, just before we break the huddle here, one more thing. I want you 2 guys to explain to me the Trey Lance move to Dallas, please. WTF? What is going on?
There's no explaining that. It's Jerry Jones, dude. Some rich oil tycoon who thinks he knows stuff about football when he doesn't. It makes no sense. Okay. Will Grier put up 400 yards passing in the preseason game, and then he cuts Will Grier and puts in Trey Lance, who looked horrible in the last preseason game he played in. So, if you're judging a move based on production on the field, that move made no sense.
John Lynch is thanking his lucky stars that Jerry Jones is the idiot that he is.
A 4th-round pick for a guy who is not even going to be probably on the roster. John Lynch is thanking Jerry Jones for that one, don't you think so,
but
James?
at the same time, John Lynch is still missing some first-round draft choices.
Yeah, but at least he got something back for him.
He got something
He was
back.
going to have to cut him. He was going to have to cut him.
He was going to cut it. He was going to put him on the practice squad and have him, run that, or he was going to cut him. And now he's got a 4th-round pick. He made out in roses, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Considering how horrible Trey Lance looked in the preseason, he just looked. He made Sam Darnold look good. Okay, if you can make Sam Darnold look good, you're sucking something hard. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all I got to say. But anyway, boys, thank you.
Hey,
for
pleasure.
the time tonight. I enjoyed it. We got to talk a little college football. We got to talk a little NFL at the end. But so far, so good on the college football season. Hopefully, there's some games this week like there was last week.
Well, all I know is I'm getting a big Connecticut pizza, sit down at noon, and watching Notre Dame, North Carolina State.
All right, that's a good one. Hopefully, we will say who'd you pick, Joe? Notre Dame or
Notre Dame? I'm going with Notre Dame. I'm going with the Irish. I'm making my father happy here.
All right, and James, you picked NC State.
I picked Dornan's boys. Yes.
Okay, well, we got you down. All right, let's go, boys. We'll reconvene at a later date. And thanks to everybody for watching. If you missed it, go on up to YouTube and type in man coverage 1725, and you will see the show. Enjoy your Friday, gentlemen, and enjoy your football weekend. All right.
Have a good one.
All right, buddy.
Yep.